The dust of dead civilizations covered everything in the forbidden stacks. Dr. Elias Vorn moved carefully between shelves that reached so high they disappeared into darkness. His small human hands looked pale against the black metal containers that held secrets older than Earth's first cities. 12 years. That was how long it had taken him to earn the right to stand here. 12 years of bowing his head. 12 years of accepting insults. 12 years of being called clever animal by creatures who believed they were gods. The Draconari had ruled the Orion Arm for 40,000 years. They called themselves dragons, and they looked the part. Standing 3 meters tall with scales that shifted between green and gold, they moved through the galaxy like kings walking through a garden they owned. Every other species existed only to serve them. Humans had met them 60 years ago. The meeting had not gone well. Elias remembered the stories his grandmother told him. She had been a child when the dragon ships first appeared above Earth. The Draconari had looked at humanity and seen nothing special, just another primitive species. Good for manual labor, good for nothing else. Now humans worked in dragon factories. Human ships carried dragon cargo. Human scientists were sometimes allowed to study dragon knowledge, but only the parts the dragons considered safe for lesser minds. Elias had played their game better than anyone. He had learned their language perfectly. He had memorized their history. He had made himself useful in ways they could not ignore. And finally, they had opened this door for him. High Archivist Zeth Vorak watched from the entrance. The old dragon's yellow eyes never left Elias as he worked. Even here, even after everything Elias had done to prove himself, they did not trust him. You may access records from the third expansion period, Seth Vorak said. His voice was like stones grinding together. Nothing else. Of course, High Archivist, Elias replied. He kept his voice soft and respectful. Inside, his heart was racing. The third expansion period was when the Draconari had conquered this section of the galaxy. The official history said they had found only primitive species and empty worlds, but Elias had noticed something strange in the records he was allowed to see. There were gaps, missing references, citations to documents that no longer existed. Someone had erased something from history. Elias worked for 3 hours, copying approved documents to his datapad. Seth Vorak grew bored and turned away to speak with a guard. It was only for a moment, just a few seconds of distraction. It was enough. Elias slipped around a corner and found what he was looking for. A sealed container marked with symbols he had seen in his dreams for years. He did not know how he recognized them. He had never been taught this language, but somehow, looking at those symbols, he understood exactly what they said. Piran Archive. Restricted. Destroy on sight. His hands moved before his mind could stop them. He broke the seal. He pulled out a crystal that glowed with soft golden light, and he saw everything. The Piran had been beautiful. They were beings of light and heat, their bodies shifting between solid and energy like flames dancing in wind. They had traveled the galaxy when the Draconari were still crawling in mud. They had seeded worlds with life. They had watched over young species with patience and care. The dragons had feared them. The Piran were everything the Draconari were not. They did not conquer. They did not enslave. They simply helped, expecting nothing in return. And that made the dragons feel small. That made them feel weak. So they had destroyed them. The war had lasted 10,000 years. The Draconari had lost billions of their own kind, but they were willing to pay any price to remove the Piran from existence. In the end, they had won. They had burned the Piran worlds. They had hunted down every survivor. They had erased every record, or so they thought. Elias watched the final moments of the Piran civilization play out in his mind. He saw their last council gather in a hidden sanctuary. He heard them speak of hope even as their species died, and he understood their final plan. They could not save themselves, but they could save what they had learned. They could plant seeds that might grow long after they were gone. The Piran had chosen a species to carry their legacy, a young species, weak, short-lived, living on a small blue world in an unremarkable solar system. The Draconari would never notice them. They were too primitive, too insignificant. The Piran had hidden their essence inside human DNA. Elias dropped the crystal. His hands were shaking. He looked down at his own body with new eyes. All those years of feeling small beside the dragons. All those years of being told humans were nothing special. And all along, they had carried this gift inside them. Sleeping. Waiting. What have you done? Seth Vorak stood at the end of the aisle. His scales had turned dark red with anger. Behind him, guards raised their weapons. I found the truth, Elias said. His voice was steady even though his heart pounded. I know what you did to the Piran. I know what humans really are. The High Archivist's eyes narrowed. You know nothing. You are an animal who has learned to read. Nothing more. Then why are you afraid? Seth Vorak did not answer. He simply gestured to the guards. They moved forward and seized Elias with rough hands. The crystal was taken and crushed beneath a dragon's foot, but it did not matter. The knowledge was already inside Elias's mind. Nothing could take it away. You will stand before the dragon's maw, Seth Vorak said. They will decide what to do with you. Elias had heard of the maw. It was the supreme tribunal of the Draconari hegemony. No other species had ever been brought before it. Those who entered rarely left with their minds intact. As the guards dragged him away, Elias looked back at the forbidden stacks. Thousands of stolen histories. Millions of erased memories. All the species the dragons had crushed and forgotten, but they had not forgotten the Piran. After 50,000 years, they still kept these archives sealed. They still feared what the beings of light had represented. And now, Elias knew why. The phoenix had not truly died. It had hidden itself in the most unlikely place the dragons could imagine. It had waited in human blood and human bone, sleeping through the long centuries. Until now, as the ship carried him toward judgment, Elias closed his eyes and felt something warm stirring in his chest. It was faint. Just a spark. But it was growing stronger with every passing moment. The dragons thought they were taking him to die. They did not understand that they were carrying him toward something else entirely. A beginning. The dragon's maw was not a building. It was a space station the size of a small moon, orbiting a dying red star. Its black surface absorbed all light. Looking at it felt like staring into a hole in reality. Elias stood in chains at the center of a vast chamber. Hundreds of Draconari filled the seats above him, their scales catching the dim red glow from the viewports. At the highest point sat 5 ancient dragons, the Tribunal Primus. Their leader was Keth Oren. He was the oldest living Draconari. His scales faded to dull gray with age, but his eyes were sharp and cold. Those eyes had watched 17 species die. They had ordered the burning of worlds without feeling anything at all. The human has been accused of accessing forbidden knowledge, a prosecutor announced. He has seen records that were sealed by the First Council. He has learned secrets that threaten the stability of the hegemony. Keth Oren leaned forward. Is this true, human? Did you see what was in those archives? Elias looked up at the ancient dragon. He thought about lying. He thought about begging for mercy. But something had changed inside him since touching that crystal. The old fear was still there, but it felt distant now, like watching someone else be afraid. I saw everything, he said. I saw what the Piran were. I saw what you did to them. And I saw what they left behind. Whispers spread through the chamber. Several younger dragons looked confused. They had never heard of the Piran. That name had been erased from every public record. Keth Oren raised a clawed hand for silence. You speak of things you do not understand. The Piran were a disease. They spread weakness across the galaxy. We cured that disease. They helped other species. They taught them. They protected them. Exactly. Keth Oren's voice turned hard. They made the weak believe they deserved to live. They disrupted the natural order. The strong rule. The weak serve. This is the law of the universe. It is your law, Elias said. Not the universe's. More whispers. Some of the dragons looked angry. Others looked something close to uncomfortable. No one had ever spoken to the tribunal this way. The sentence is already decided, the prosecutor interrupted. Neural dissolution. His memories will be erased. His personality will be destroyed. His body will be returned to human space as a warning. Elias felt cold hands grip his arms as guards moved forward. This was it. Everything he had learned would be lost. The truth would stay buried, unless he did something impossible. The words came from somewhere deep inside him. He did not consciously remember learning them. But as he opened his mouth, they flowed out like water from a spring. Ancient syllables, sounds that had not been spoken aloud in 50,000 years. The Piran funeral rites. He had seen them in the archive crystal. A simple prayer spoken when a Piran died. Words meant to release their light back into the universe, to let them become part of something greater. The moment the first word left his lips, the lights in the chamber flickered. Kethoran stood so quickly his chair fell backward. Stop him. Silence him now. But Elias kept speaking. The words poured out faster and faster. The guards tried to cover his mouth, but their hands burned when they touched his skin. Golden light was spreading across his body like cracks in old stone. Deep within the station, systems that had been dormant for thousands of years began to wake. The Draconari had built the Maw on the ruins of an old Piran outpost. They had stripped it for technology but never understood what truly lay beneath the metal and stone. The Piran had left something behind. A seed. Waiting for the right words to make it grow. The floor began to shake. Dragons screamed and fled for the exits. Kethoran stayed frozen in place, watching as light erupted from the human's chest. It was golden and warm, like sunrise after a long night. "What have you done?" the old dragon whispered. "I called them," Elias replied. His voice sounded different now, layered, as if many voices spoke through him at once. "The Piran are not gone. They were never gone. They were just waiting." Across the galaxy, something extraordinary happened. On Earth, a woman woke from sleep, with tears streaming down her face. She had dreamed of fire and feathers, and a voice telling her she was loved. On a human colony near the galactic rim, a child laughed and held up his hands. Sparks danced between his fingers like tiny stars. On 1,000 worlds, every human alive felt a warmth in their chest, a connection to something ancient and beautiful. Most did not understand what it meant, but all of them, for just a moment, felt less alone. Commander Yuki Tanaka was reviewing trade documents aboard the diplomatic vessel Prometheus when the wave hit her. She gasped and grabbed her desk as visions flooded her mind. She saw a space station. She saw a human man wrapped in golden light. She saw dragons moving to kill him. She did not know how she knew where he was, but she knew she had to reach him. Set a course for the Maw, she ordered her crew. Maximum speed. "Commander, that would violate 17 treaties. We would be entering sovereign Draconari space without permission." "I know." Yuki's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Do it anyway." Back in the tribunal chamber, Elias floated 3 feet above the ground. The light around him pulsed like a heartbeat. He could feel millions of human minds touching his own. He could feel their fear and wonder and hope. And beneath all of that, he felt something else. A presence. The ember, the Piran had called it. A fragment of their collective consciousness, hidden in human genes for 100,000 years. It had finally woken up. "You cannot destroy us," Elias said to Kethoran. "We carry the light of those you murdered. We carry their hope, and we will not let it die again." The old dragon's face twisted with rage and something that might have been fear. "You are insects. You are cattle. We have crushed species far greater than yours. Perhaps, but you have never faced a species with nothing left to lose." Elias smiled, and for a moment his eyes burned like twin suns. "You took everything from the Piran. You thought you had taken everything from us. But hope is very hard to kill. It tends to grow back in unexpected places." The Prometheus dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the Maw. It was a tiny ship compared to the Draconari vessels surrounding the station. But inside it were humans, and humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, were no longer quite as helpless as they seemed. Commander Tanaka opened a channel. "This is the human vessel Prometheus. We are here to retrieve our citizen. Any attempt to stop us will be met with force." Draconari warships turned toward the tiny human craft. Their weapons charged. They outnumbered the Prometheus 100 to 1, but as they prepared to fire, something strange happened. Their systems began to fail. Navigation went offline. Weapons powered down. Lights flickered throughout every dragon vessel. The Piran technology buried in the maw was reaching out, and it had decided to help. Elias looked up through the chaos and smiled. Rescue was coming. But more importantly, the truth was finally free. After 50,000 years of silence, the phoenix was rising, and the dragons would never be able to bury it again. The escape pod tumbled through space as Commander Tanaka pulled Elias aboard the Prometheus. Behind them, the dragon's maw burned with strange golden fire. Draconari ships scrambled in confusion, their systems still failing, their commanders screaming orders that no one could follow. Elias lay on the floor of the ship, breathing hard. The light had faded from his skin, but something was different inside him now. He could feel a presence at the edge of his thoughts. Warm, patient, waiting. "What happened to you?" Tanaka asked. She knelt beside him, checking for injuries. "What was that light?" "The ember," Elias replied. His voice was hoarse. "It is what remains of the Piran. They hid it inside humanity before they died. And now, it has finally woken up." The ship shook as it jumped to faster than light speed. They were running from the largest military power in the galaxy. They had violated laws that carried death sentences, but Tanaka did not hesitate for even a moment. "Tell me everything," she said. So Elias told her. He explained what the Piran had been. He described how the Draconari had destroyed them out of jealousy and fear. He shared the secret that humans had carried in their blood for 100,000 years without knowing it. When he finished, Tanaka was quiet for a long time. "So we are not alone," she finally said. "We never were. No. We were chosen." The Piran saw something in humanity that they believed was worth saving, worth protecting. They gave us their legacy because they trusted us to carry it forward. But what does that mean? What can we actually do with this gift? Elias closed his eyes. He reached inside himself and touched the ember. It responded with images and feelings rather than words. He saw ancient ships powered by light. He saw wounds healing in seconds. He saw shields that could stop any weapon. And most importantly, he saw understanding. The ability to connect with any technology the Piran had ever created. "We can do many things," he said. "But the ember cannot fight for us." The Piran did not believe in weapons. They only believed in growth and healing and protection. "Whatever power we have, we must use it ourselves." The Prometheus reached human space 3 days later. By then, the galaxy had already changed. Admiral Chen Wei-lin stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, watching reports flood in from every human colony. People were manifesting strange abilities. Engineers were suddenly able to understand alien machines they had never seen before. Doctors were healing injuries with nothing but touch and concentration. Children were lighting fires with their thoughts. And the Draconari had declared war. "They are mobilizing their entire fleet," an officer reported. "Initial estimates suggest over 10,000 warships moving toward human territory." Chen Wei-lin felt fear grip his heart. Earth's defense fleet numbered less than 200 ships. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched in every possible way. But then he remembered the warmth that had touched his mind 3 days ago. He remembered the vision of fire and rebirth. And he remembered that humanity had survived impossible things before. "Begin evacuation of non-essential personnel from border colonies," he ordered. "And find Dr. Elias Vorn. I need to know what we are dealing with." Elias arrived at Earth 2 weeks later. By then, the first dragon attacks had already begun. 3 human colonies had been destroyed. Millions were dead. The galaxy watched as the ancient hegemony prepared to crush another species beneath its heel. But something unexpected was happening on those conquered worlds. Kira Okonkwo was an engineer on the mining colony of New Lagos when the dragons came. She had hidden in the ruins of her workplace as alien soldiers marched through the streets. She had watched friends die. She had prayed for rescue that never came. And then she had felt something awaken inside her. It started as a tingling in her hands. Then it became a voice in her mind. Not words exactly, but knowledge, understanding. She looked at the broken machines around her and suddenly knew exactly how they worked. More than that, she knew how to make them work differently. The Draconari had built their ships using stolen Piran technology. They had taken pieces they did not truly understand and forced them into shapes that served their purposes. But Kira could see the original design beneath the changes. She could speak to the machines in their first language. She reached out with her mind and touched the nearest dragon ship. The vessel's systems went haywire. Navigation failed. Weapons turned off. The crew found themselves trapped in a ship they could no longer control, and Kira Okonkwo walked out of the ruins, glowing with soft golden light, leading every surviving human on New Lagos to safety. Stories like this began spreading across human space. The Draconari would attack, expecting easy victories. Instead, they found humans who could disable their technology, heal their wounded in moments, and escape through pathways that should not exist. Admiral Chen Wei-lin met with Elias aboard the defense station. The old soldier looked tired but determined. "I need to understand what is happening," he said. "My officers are reporting abilities that should be impossible. People are doing things that break every law of physics we know." Elias nodded. "The Ember is unlocking what the Piran left inside us. It is not giving us new power. It is showing us power we always had. Can we use it to win this war? We can use it to survive." The Piran did not create weapons, but they were masters of protection, healing, and understanding. Every piece of technology they ever made still responds to their call. And now, we can make that call. Chen Wei-lin leaned forward. "The dragons used Piran technology to build their empire. Are you saying we can turn their own ships against them? Not turn them against the dragons. But we can wake them up. We can remind them of their original purpose. The machines remember what they were made to do. They remember that they were built to help, not hurt." For the first time in weeks, a small smile crossed the Admiral's face. "Then we have a chance." But even as hope grew in human space, darker news arrived. The Draconari High Council had made a decision. If humans could not be conquered through normal warfare, they would be destroyed entirely. The dragons were building a star killer, the same weapon they had used against the Piran 50,000 years ago. They planned to destroy Earth's sun and end the human species forever. Elias felt the ember stir inside him when he heard this news. It showed him something. A vision of a place hidden in the darkest part of the galaxy. A sanctuary the Piran had built before they died. The Crucible. "There is one more thing they left behind," Elias told the Admiral. "One final gift. But reaching it will be the hardest journey any human has ever made." Chen Wei-lin straightened his shoulders. "Tell me where it is. Whatever it takes, we will find a way." The war was just beginning. The dragons were stronger, older, and more ruthless than any enemy humanity had ever faced. But for the first time in 60 years, humans were not fighting alone. The Phoenix had given them its fire. Now they had to decide what to do with the flame. 1 year into the war, the galaxy had learned something new about humanity. They did not know how to give up. Elias stood on the bridge of the Liberation, a ship built from parts of 100 different vessels. Human engineers had worked alongside awakened Piran systems to create something that had never existed before. It was not a warship. It carried no weapons, but it could go places no dragon could follow. Behind him, a crew of 200 prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. They were heading to the Crucible, the last Piran sanctuary. They had to reach it before the Star Killer reached Earth. "Jump in 30 seconds, the navigator called out. Elias closed his eyes and reached for the ember. It responded instantly, filling his mind with warmth and light. Over the past year, he had learned to communicate with it more clearly. It was not a separate being. It was more like a very old memory that had finally found someone to remember it. The Liberation vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind a galaxy at war. On the human colony of New Shanghai, Kira Okonkwo led a group of survivors through tunnels beneath a burning city. Dragon soldiers marched above them, searching for any humans who still lived, but Kira could feel the old Piran systems buried in the ground. They had been sleeping for thousands of years, covered by rock and forgotten by everyone. She reached out with her mind and woke them up. Shields flickered into existence around the tunnel. The dragon sensors above went blind. Kira guided her people through passages that opened just for them and closed behind them. The machines remembered their purpose. They remembered that they had been built to protect the helpless. How much longer? A young mother asked. She carried a sleeping child in her arms. Not far, Kira replied. There is a ship waiting. We will get everyone out. This scene repeated itself across human space. Every world the dragons attacked. They found something unexpected. Humans who could heal wounds that should be fatal. Engineers who could disable dragon technology with a touch. Children who could hide entire buildings from enemy sensors. The Draconari were winning the war by every normal measure. They had destroyed dozens of human colonies. They had killed hundreds of millions. Their fleets controlled most of the territory humanity had once held, but they were not winning fast enough. Humans kept escaping. Humans kept fighting back. And worst of all, other species were starting to notice. Veth Sural was young for a Draconari historian. He had spent his life studying the glory of the hegemony, believing everything he was taught about his people's greatness. But watching this war had changed something inside him. He saw dragon soldiers burn a hospital filled with wounded humans. He heard commanders laugh about the screaming. He watched his people become monsters and call it justice. And he started asking questions. The archives Veth Sural could access were limited. But he was clever and patient. He found references to sealed records. He discovered hints of erased histories. And eventually, he learned the truth about the Purin. Everything the humans said was true. His people had committed genocide against beings whose only crime was kindness. They had built their empire on the bones of innocence. And now they were doing it again. Veth Sural made a decision that would change his life forever. He began sending information to human resistance cells, ship movements, supply schedules, weakness in dragon defenses. Every piece of knowledge he could gather went to the enemy. He was not alone. Other dragons had begun to doubt. They whispered to each other in secret, afraid to speak their thoughts aloud. The war was supposed to be easy. Humans were supposed to break quickly. Instead, they fought like no species the hegemony had ever encountered. Why do they not surrender? A young dragon officer asked Veth Sural one night. We have destroyed so much. Why do they keep fighting? Veth Sural thought about the question for a long time. Perhaps because they have something we do not understand. Something we lost long ago. What is that? Hope. Veth Sural replied. They still believe things can be better. They still think tomorrow matters. We have forgotten what that feels like. The liberation dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of a dark nebula. Stars were few here. Light was scarce. This was the emptiest part of the galaxy. A place where nothing lived and no one traveled. Except someone had built something here. Elias stared at the view screen in wonder. The crucible was a sphere surrounding an entire star. It was so large that Earth could have fit inside it 1,000,000 times. Its surface was covered in patterns that shifted and glowed like living things. By all the stars, Commander Tanaka whispered. She had come with them, unwilling to stay behind when humanity's future was at stake. How did they build something so big? They had millions of years, Elias replied. And they believed in thinking long-term. The ship moved toward the massive structure. As they got closer, doorways began to open in the surface. Lights flickered on in welcome. The crucible recognized what Elias carried inside him. It recognized the ember. They docked in a hangar that could have held 1,000 ships. The air was warm and smelled like flowers. Gravity felt gentle. Everything about this place had been designed to comfort, to heal, to welcome. Elias stepped off the ship and felt tears running down his face. He did not fully understand why he was crying, but the ember did. This was the last place the Purin had called home. This was where they had come to die, and it was where they had left their final gift to the universe. A voice spoke in his mind. Not the ember this time. Something older. Something vast. Welcome, child of Earth. We have been waiting for you. Who are you? Elias asked aloud. We are the chorus. We are the voices of every species the dragons destroyed. We are the memories they tried to erase. And we are here to offer you a choice. The walls around him came alive with light. Images appeared, showing civilizations that had risen and fallen across millions of years. Beautiful species, wonderful cultures, All of them gone now, eaten by dragon hunger, but not forgotten. The Piran had saved what they could. They had preserved the essence of every victim in this place. The chorus was their combined voice. Speaking together across the ages, "The Star Killer will reach your sun in 40 days, the chorus said. "We can give you the power to stop it. But there are two paths forward, and you must choose between them." Elias felt his crew gathering behind him. They had heard the voice too. They understood that this moment would decide everything. "Show me," he said. The chorus showed him, and Elias understood that the hardest battle was still to come. The chorus showed Elias two futures. In the first, humanity embraced the full power of the Piran legacy. They became beings of light and fire. Just as the Piran had been, they swept across the galaxy like a burning wind, destroying every dragon ship, every dragon world, every dragon life. The Star Killer was turned back on its creators. Draconari civilization ended in the same flames they had used against so many others. It was victory, complete and total. The dragons would never hurt anyone again. But as Elias watched this future unfold, he saw what came after. Humans, drunk on power. Humans who had forgotten mercy. Humans who looked at other species the same way the dragons once looked at them. "We have seen this before," the chorus said sadly. Species who chose vengeance became the very monsters they fought. Power without wisdom destroys the one who holds it. "And the other path?" Elias asked. The second vision was different. Harder in some ways, gentler in others. The Crucible's energy was redirected not as a weapon but as a healing force. The Star Killer's power was transformed. Its destructive light changed to something that repaired instead of ruined. Across the galaxy, wounds began to close. Poisoned worlds started to recover. The damage of 40,000 years of dragon rule began to reverse, and the Draconari themselves were offered something they had never given to anyone else. A choice. A chance to change. "But they murdered billions," Commander Tanaka said. Her voice was hard with old anger. "They destroyed the Piran. They killed our people. How can we just forgive that?" The chorus responded. "Forgiveness is not pretending the harm never happened. It is choosing not to become the harm yourself." Elias turned to face his crew. These 200 humans had volunteered for a mission they never expected to survive. They had lost friends and family to dragon attacks. They had every reason to want revenge. "I cannot make this choice alone," he said. "It affects all of humanity." Silence fell over the hangar. The crew looked at each other, fear and uncertainty on their faces. Then Kira Okonkwo stepped forward. She had joined them at the last moment, escaping the fall of New Shanghai just in time to reach the liberation. She had watched dragons burn everything she loved. "I want them to suffer," she admitted. Her voice shook with emotion. "Every time I close my eyes, I see what they did. I dream about making them pay." She paused, taking a deep breath. "But my grandmother used to tell me something. She said that hate is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. If we choose destruction, we destroy ourselves first." More voices joined in. Some wanted vengeance. Others wanted peace. The debate lasted for hours as the Star Killer moved closer to Earth with every passing minute. Finally, Elias raised his hand for silence. The ember burned bright in his chest. He could feel the weight of this moment pressing down on him. "The Piran chose us," he said. "Out of all the species in the galaxy, they trusted humans to carry their legacy. They did not choose us because we were strong. They did not choose us because we were powerful. They chose us because they saw something else." He looked at his crew with tears in his eyes. They saw beings who could suffer and still love. They saw a species that could be beaten down and still stand up. They saw creatures who faced darkness and chose to light candles instead of cursing the night. He turned to face the chorus. "We choose healing." The crucible activated. Light exploded outward from the ancient structure, spreading across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. It touched the Star Killer and transformed it. The weapon designed to destroy Earth's sun instead released a wave of restoration that swept across every world the dragons had ever harmed. On Earth, people looked up as golden light filled the sky. They felt warmth touch their skin. They felt old wounds begin to heal. On conquered human colonies, Draconari ships lost power and drifted helplessly. But they were not destroyed. They simply stopped working. The soldiers inside found themselves alive and unharmed, surrounded by technology that no longer answered their commands. On the Dragon homeworld, Kethoran watched in horror as his empire crumbled. Not through fire and destruction, but through something he did not understand at all. The humans had beaten him, and they had done it without becoming what he was. Veth Sural stood in the chaos of the command center, watching everything change. When Draconari guards came to arrest him for treason, he did not run. He simply waited. But the guards never reached him. A human woman appeared, glowing with soft light. She looked at Veth Sural and smiled. "You helped us," she said. "You risked everything to do what was right. Would you like to help us build something better?" Veth Sural looked at his fellow dragons, frozen in fear and confusion. He looked at the human who offered him hope instead of revenge. And he made the same choice she had made. "Yes," he said, "I would." The war ended not with a final battle but with a moment of grace. The Draconari hegemony did not fall. It transformed. Dragons who refused to change were contained, their power stripped away without violence. Dragons who chose differently were welcomed into something new. It took years. The healing was slow and painful. Trust had to be rebuilt from nothing. Old hatreds did not disappear overnight, but humanity showed the galaxy something it had never seen before. A species powerful enough to destroy its enemies who chose mercy instead. A people who had been treated as cattle and slaves, who could have become tyrants themselves, and who walked away from that temptation. 10 years after the war, Elias stood in a garden on a world that had once been dead. Draconari and human children played together in the flowers, laughing at games that had no winners or losers. Veth Sural sat nearby, writing a new history. A true history. One that would remember the Piran and honor their sacrifice. The ember still lived inside Elias. It whispered to him sometimes, showing him glimpses of the future. He saw a galaxy slowly healing. He saw species learning to trust each other. He saw hope spreading like seeds in fertile ground. Was it worth it? Tanaka asked, sitting beside him. She had become the first human ambassador to the Galactic Restoration Council. Her job was hard, but she had never been happier. Elias watched a dragon child help a human toddler climb a tree. He thought about all the suffering, all the loss, all the moments when it would have been so easy to give in to despair. "The Piran believed in us," he said. "They gave us everything they had because they thought we could be better than the species that destroyed them. We proved them right." The sun set over the garden, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Somewhere in the universe, the chorus sang quietly. They sang of remembrance. They sang of hope, and they sang of the strange, stubborn, wonderful species that had looked into the dragon's mouth and chosen to become something else entirely. Not conquerors, not avengers, not monsters wearing the skin of heroes, just humans, imperfect and struggling and somehow still believing that tomorrow could be better than today. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, and it had chosen to guard instead of burn. That choice made all the difference.